So, who remembers this guy? This was part of my look at some interesting toys from Asia that I found that flip into big dramatic transformation effects when slid into little discs, or when slid into each other, or slid in general. Well, back then I surmised that because of how powerful the spring gimmick is, I worried about there being some kind of US safety law that prevented these from actually happening, so it was likely that they would not be coming to the US. As about 1 billion people on Twitter pointed me out, they came to the US. So now we have Screechers Wild, which is a toy line I actually pronounced the name of because I still have no idea what the official name of those were. But hey, we have them now, and now they are far more affordable than the ones I purchased. I'm so happy with my life decisions. So, let's take a look and see how the American versions of these came out. What you are looking at is Monkeywrench. They have actually named all of them with some rather cutesy kind of like wordplay names. That is Gate Creeper now, which I will admit I dig. So, taking a look at Monkeywrench, he is a big kind of armored truck looking vehicle mode, done up all in translucent red, aside from the base, which is opaque. Now, this is not translucent plastic I worry about, because unless you leave it in this mode, it's not bearing any kind of stress. So, I'm not terribly worried about it. That said, he's looking a little bit plain. Now, we're going to talk about this a little bit more, but as far as deco goes, all you really have is some different color on the back wheels and a little bit of paint to get some of the windows. You do have an incidental play feature. You see, he has a missile rack up top, which is just pegged in, so you actually can rotate it left and right like a tank turret. That feels more incidental, though. It doesn't really play to the toy in any way. But yeah, he's a nice little vehicle all the way around. So, we're going to do what you do with these. Now, technically you're supposed to roll them into the disc in order to activate the actual transformation effect, but I find that to be a little bit hard to keep into frame, so I'm going to do it the opposite way. I haven't done that on this review stage. That was really loud, and I might have to adjust that in the editor. But still the same big, huge backflip gimmick in order to achieve his transformation, which still looks really cool and really dynamic. So, taking a look, he's got a very, well, what you would expect. He has a very big ape face going on. A little bit primal here. Yep, big snorting nostril nose. You can see the mouth now. I will admit, the translucent plastic makes it a little bit hard to pick out the details, but you can now see that some of the details from vehicle mode, like that lining, now forms the individual creases between his fingers. So you actually do have a little bit of clever design there. Back feet, you can actually tell the monkey legs, big hips and all that. So all the shapes are there. He is riding a surfboard, which does let me imagine him to be a little bit Optimus Primal. If he was like blue and silver and could go like a little transmetal, that'd be a little bit closer, but as it is, whatever. Now you're gonna notice a few things here different from the original releases I covered, and if I put him side by side with the future Gate Creeper, you might notice he looks really plain by comparison. For whatever reason, they decided to leave stickers off altogether, so your now domestic versions are mostly just bare translucent plastic. I'm not big on this. Like, for all intents and purposes, they're the exact same releases. But just for whatever reason, they just decided not to deco the toy up in any way, shape, or form. I really wish for the US production run it had been opaque plastic, so the details could really stand out a lot more. I don't know. I find it just to be a little bit disappointing. Just because, look, it's so much more dynamic, with the actual, all the sticker and all the intended detail. But c'est la vie is what it is. It's still better than what I paid to get one of these guys. So, that's what a deluxe figure in this line looks like, for lack of a better term. It's actually like stage 2, or something like that. If we want to go a little bit smaller, I can introduce you to another toy in the line. This is Revadactyl. I love that name. I wish I had a band in high school named that. As you can see, he is also translucent red in plastic, but you'll also notice he has more colors going on. He has actual paint on the side, nice silver racing style design, black windshields all the way around, black wheels, which actually make a little bit more sense than whatever beige plastic that it went with on that one. And even a little bit of smoky plastic for that rear section and spoiler. So he has a much more dynamic and much cooler look to him. That I can actually go with, and I wish they did that a little bit more often. Same feature, same gimmick. Let's try another disc. Backflipping into his Pteranodon mode. So these basic ones seem to be a little bit more simple. You have to use your imagination a little bit more. You can see they've opened up the car shells to kind of act as Revadactyl's wings, and that's pretty much what you have to go with here. Not as many parts devoted to actually looking like the beast it's supposed to be. Again, this is where the translucent plastic is failing me to capture the detail. You can see the beak and maybe a little bit of the crest of the head, but the eyes are hard to make out. That's unfortunate. At least the tail has some difference here, and the spoiler makes sense for the tail here. Some of these work better than others. This is probably my favorite of the smaller size class, so that gets good points. You know, for what it is, I think that works out pretty nicely. But they also have larger ones, so we're going to have to quickly take a look at another larger one. This is Scorpio Drift. Like I said, they're kind of punny with some of these names, so bear with it a little bit. Now, this is one of the larger ones of the series, and to be honest, I didn't see anything like this when I researched it originally. I don't know if my research just wasn't very good, or if these are uniquely produced for the American audience, which I would actually believe given some of the circumstances to the toy and some of the ways it works. It is entirely possible I just missed them in my original research because I was just cherry-picking Chinese letters and putting them into Google and hoping they came up. But as we can see here, brilliant emerald green, lots of sticker detail here, and a little bit of paint. That gold is all painted on, both on the windshields and on those big drills in front. You also have a little bit of different plastic. There's some darker green elements going on, as well as that rear section, which is going to come into play here in a little bit. So yeah, that's a much more dynamic look. I like that a lot more. Now this is interesting because the one thing to Screechers Wild that gets me a little bit is they all do the same thing. There's a ton of different toys in the series, but they all do the backflip gimmick. Well, for this, they stretch their legs a little bit. He still backflips, but when you push the disc in, or roll him into a disc, that's all that happens. That in itself is not entirely exciting. Now, is it? Well, if we send a second disc deeper into him... Wow, he didn't like that disc. He threw it all the way across the stage. But you know what? It still transformed him into his scorpion mode, so hey, we'll give him partial credit on that one. So this is where they decided to get a little bit creative, using 2 discs instead of just 1. I've got another figure from this range, H2 Octane, and he just grabs both discs at the same time, and you can just use one to transform him all the way. I find this a little bit more interesting, though I do still find the design a little bit flawed here. You can see it's far more simple than something like Monkeywrench, where here it's much more obvious what went where. You can still see a lot of the car aspects of him, unfortunately. I do like that the drills are now fully exposed, so they look much larger, and now these gaps are pronounced to actually look a little bit more like scorpion pinchers. What I don't like is that the tail section, what's supposed to be the tail, doesn't quite go up high enough, so not only is it hard to actually make out the scorpion face that's in there, there are actual eyes molded in, but they aren't painted, so you can't really see them, so I'm trying my best, I can't really do it. The big part of him, eyes, mouth, and you can't unsee it. So that takes away from him a little bit. If the tail was higher up, that wouldn't be an issue. If he didn't have those headlight stickers, that wouldn't be an issue. But they are an issue, so there you go. So that's pretty much the range of toys we've got going on here. And the interesting thing to me is the price point on all of these sizes. When I went to Target to pick these up, $8, $10, $12. That's not a whole lot of difference between the sizes, and you can tell there's not a whole lot different about them. It's just mostly down to a slight size difference and the complexity of the design. I am curious why the $10 figure is the only one that didn't get extra stickers or paint, especially since that seems to be the main size that's selling. But, whatever. I find for $8, these guys turn out pretty good, but some of them are a little bit less interesting than Revadactyl here. Overall, I think the US versions turned out just fine. I mean, the one thing that I can criticize them for is the discs. The discs themselves are boring. Like, they market them as exclusive designs with this release, but you'd be hard-pressed to remember which discs came with which figure. Also, I'll just go ahead and say it. If you don't know how these work, there's a magnet in there and a little bit of metal inside that pulls the disc in and hits all the triggers. So that's how these work. But yeah, they all come with these discs, and all of the writing and all the symbols from the original releases have been removed. Like, if we look at the one that was imported, you've got actual letters, which I presume might be names. You've got actual stuff being said and written on these. I don't know what they say, but they say stuff. And that's more than these. And you get a ton of these with all of the ones you buy. I mean, like, if I got a ton of these discs, and there's no point to it. Like, even if you lose one, like, you've still got, like, 4 others lying around. Like, it's ridiculous. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Stop with the discs. Paint the toys. Or use opaque plastic so we can see the toys better. Just take some of these discs away. Like, you don't really need more than 2, maybe 3 on the larger releases. I certainly didn't need to get like 4 or 5 with one toy. That's just overkill. But yeah, if you see these, I think quality-wise, which is the most important thing for me, they are the same as the original releases I imported. So buy in confidence. They're still fun. Just keep in mind, they're a little bit plain, and they all do the same backflip. So, you know, mileage may vary.